With smartphones, social media, and YouTube, one of the earlier yet very popular ways to explore what others were thinking and talking about has dropped in popularity a bit, but is still a robust area for learning and entertainment. In this video, we'll be talking about accessing the world using a shortwave radio. Shortwave radio broadcasts still abound in the shortwave bands, despite the growing use of the internet and internet-related content sources such as YouTube. Let's start with a couple of concepts before we take a look at the Tecsun PL600 portable shortwave radio receiver. One of the terms you are familiar with is the band in which the radio frequency lies. What you may be less familiar with is that there are a lot more bands than just the AM and FM band on your car's radio. A portable shortwave radio has circuitry that allows you to tune in the stations operating on those bands that are less familiar to many people. The bands covered with the Tecsun PL600 include low frequency, medium frequency, high frequency, and very high frequency signals. You'll find most of the stations you'll want to listen to within these bands. For example, normal AM broadcast stations are in the medium frequency band. Shortwave broadcasts are in the high frequency bands, and FM radio stations are in the very high frequency bands, as are air traffic control and air navigation transmitters. Within these labels, the term band and frequency are often inversely related. For example, a high-frequency signal has a relatively short wavelength. Thus, the high-frequency band is where you find shortwave radio stations. Low-frequency bands have long-wave stations. The Tecsun PL600 allows you to access 14 international shortwave broadcast bands in addition to the normal AM and FM bands. As described in the instructions, shortwave bands have better propagation at different times of the day, according to the properties of the ionosphere and their transmission frequencies. Another term you'll see is single sideband, or SSB. A station transmitting a single sideband signal is basically transmitting with an AM signal, that is, amplitude modulation. The signal is made up of three parts. One part is the carrier, and two parts of the three are the upper and lower edges of the carrier. Single sideband transmitters are able to place the information in the AM signal into either the upper or the lower sideband, thus narrowing the bandwidth of the signal and making it more efficient. This requires more complex transmitters and receivers and makes tuning the frequency a bit more difficult, as the receiver only needs to receive a much smaller portion of the signal's bandwidth as compared to the full AM signal. Many small portable shortwave radios don't include this tuning circuitry. The Tecsun PL600 does include this tuning circuitry though. A single sideband signal is tuned by tuning the frequency on the main display and then using the single sideband tuning knob to shift the received frequency either up or down a bit until the signal comes through clearly. This becomes an important feature if you plan on listening to ham radio conversations, where they are often broadcast in either upper or lower sideband, depending on the frequency being used. So, with some key concepts addressed, why bother with shortwave listening? The folks who spend a lot of time listening to and for shortwave radio broadcasts do so for many reasons. Among the most popular is that they can hear for themselves both news and cultural programming from around the world to better understand people from other countries. Short of visiting the country in person, spending time listening to broadcasts from both government and commercial sources can provide insights into how others see the world and the events that occur. Other shortwave listeners are focused on understanding the science of radio propagation. By keeping track of what countries they are hearing, on what frequency bands they are hearing them, and when those contacts occur, they can draw conclusions about what's happening in our atmosphere and our little corner of the solar system. Others enjoy searching for stations from parts of the world they have yet to hear from. Often referred to as DXing for distance listening, these listeners keep track of each contact and strive to listen to stations from various areas of the world. So, with these concepts explained, let's take a look at the Tecsun PL600 to see how this portable shortwave radio receiver might meet your needs, whatever they are. Let's take a look at what comes in the Tecsun box. First, of course, is the radio itself. It's got an antenna here along the top, you can see. Control panel here with some buttons for direct input. We'll talk about that more in a minute. A couple of buttons up here for setting timers. The on-off switch, some more control buttons over here. Along this side, you've got the main tuning knob, a single sideband tuning knob, and a volume control knob. Along the other side, you have a connection for a Wart type battery charger. You have also connection for a wire antenna that I'll show you in just a minute, plus a couple of switches for setting treble bass and setting the RF gain or the antenna sensitivity. So those are the switches that are along right here. And so we'll come back to the radio in just a minute. You also get a nice little envelope type of sleeve to put the radio in. It's fuzzy on the inside and provides a little bit of padding if you're going to be taking this on the road, having it in your car or in your suitcase. Next, there's a wire antenna. And for shortwave listening, a wire antenna is probably going to be what you need. And so on one end, it's got the plug that's going to plug into the radio. And then the other end, this little winder has got a little clip that you could clip it to a nail or clip it to a curtain to hang the wire up and get it up in the air. So you get a little bit better reception than you will from that expandable antenna. Next that comes in the set is a little set of earplugs so that you can listen privately. There's an earplug jack on the side of the radio, and so you've got just some lightweight earbuds also as well. And then last but not least, there's a Wart charger with the connector here and the little transformer here. So that's the hardware that comes in this set. You get a pretty good instruction manual that covers some of the important points for the radio. It's several pages. The printing's clear, the images are good, and the grammar is amazingly good as well. So it's pretty easy to follow some of the things that you're going to want to understand about the radio as you make use of it. And then last but not least is just a little warranty card. I found the Tecsun 600 does a great job at pulling in AM broadcast stations and local FM stations. In fact, it does a great job as a table radio for your desk or study. You need to be aware about a couple of things in the HF bands right now, however. We're at the tail end of a low sunspot cycle, so radio propagation has been negatively impacted for a couple of years now. Solar activity impacts the ionization of the atmosphere, and that impacts how well radio waves travel around the globe. Ham radio operators have complained that it takes a bit more effort to gather contacts from long distances. The Tecsun's collapsing antenna doesn't do a very good job in the HF bands in this sunspot environment. The included long wire antenna does much better, but contacts can still be hard to come by. I use a smartphone app that displays scheduled HF broadcasts by time of day and from where they originate. I've been able to catch a few of them. I've also been able to listen in on some ham radio conversations and what hams call nets. Nets are scheduled radio rendezvous on a particular frequency just to chat or discuss a subject of common interest. You also need to be aware that you may or may not be able to receive a scheduled broadcast if the broadcaster has directed the signal toward a certain geographical area. If you're not within that targeted area, you may not be able to get good reception. I've got an upcoming review planned on an external loop antenna that is supposed to be able to pull in more distant stations and is well within the budget of even the casual listener. It's called the MLA30 loop antenna. Spoiler alert, it really makes a difference when compared to the included long wire antenna. There are a number of online reviews comparing the Tecsun PL600 with the Tecsun PL660. In looking at the primary differences, it seemed to me that the primary one was the inclusion of the air traffic control frequencies. If you have an interest in aviation and live near an airport, that extra feature might be worth the additional cost. Additionally, the extra $50 might not be a big deal to you, so in that case, the PL660 is a good choice too. On the other hand, if you are just getting your feet wet in the shortwave listening hobby and aren't sure how deeply you'll get into it, the PL600 looks like a very good entry-level receiver for a reasonable price. Hey, if you found this video helpful, please click on the thumbs up icon below the video and consider subscribing to the Gadget Talk channel. Click on the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. If you use the product link in the description below, I'll get a small commission if you purchase from Amazon. Those inputs help in acquiring other new and interesting gadgets to review. Thanks for watching.